I being overconfident? Am I becoming complacent about complacency?
I think you are.
Oh, he's not the Messiah. He's just a very naughty boy.
Yeah, I've got big ears.
Brian doesn't want to see anyone now. Piss off.
That's the one. Because you literally complete me, and we complete each other.
You've obviously encountered discrimination in your own life by virtue of being Australian.
Hey, Manuel Camp was a real pissant who was very rarely stable.
I don't want to get too gushy, but I might just be saying you complete me, Dean. PNG now stands for Pritchard and Good.
Branding is not a bad blind date. Look at you! You are insane!
How did I do that?
You're
How
insane!
Did I do that?
You're insane!
Well, welcome everybody to another day in paradise. I hope you're well. My name is Joseph JAFFE. I am your host today. It is April 13th, just checking. Yes, it's April 13th. I'm having a weird case of deja vu all over again because I'm looking at the birthdays and I feel like it was just yesterday that I wished the people that I'm wishing today happy birthday, but it was a year ago. So it's very weird. I'm not going to lie. It's very weird. But maybe time flies when you're having fun. Maybe, I don't know, maybe. My mom is here and it's very, very appropriate that she's here because today is National Scrabble Day. Now, I have to tell you that my mother tormented me when I was a child. She would play Scrabble with me and she would never, ever, ever, ever let me win. And she would come out with all these weird words. I still remember them. EN is N and TE is T. Apparently, you can spell letters with like 2 letters. How do you do that? How do you use 2 letters to spell 1 letter? But she did it, and she was absolutely accurate. And you know what? I don't know that I've ever beaten her since. So enough about my tormented childhood. Stephen Rubin is here. He is watching. Anna Bowman is here as well. And Glenn is here, and he said, highlight of my day. Glenn, thank you for continuing to support me in the show through purchase of JAFFE coin. More on that very, very soon. And I mean, really very, very soon. But today, someone who I'm pretty sure plays Scrabble and is probably very good at it and would probably kick my butt at it. So I'm not going to challenge him to Scrabble ever, is Mr. Michael Kassan. He's the chairman and CEO of MediaLink. He is, I call him the Godfather of marketing, but you know, I'll embarrass him later. He's a bit of a father figure to many people and certainly to me as well. His warmth, his generosity is something that I treasure, and his friendship, I should say. Tomorrow, Mr. Paul Epstein will be on Late Night JAFFE. I will have a chilled, beautiful gin martini. I shouldn't even have to say gin, a martini, as we celebrate him at 9 p.m. I know Mr. Tom Morris was a little confused about the show, but we are 12 noon today. We are 12 noon on Thursday with Bryce Hoffman, an amazing concept called red teaming. So let's get to the JAFFE coin for a moment. The JAFFE coin is holding firm at $2.13. As you know, I'm going to start to figure out ways that you can take advantage of the JAFFE economy, the expanding JAFFE economy, the shared JAFFE economy. JAFFE coin holders, regulars, previous guests, all get to participate and share. And in fact, one of the things that I instituted was this idea of 10 JAFFE coins will buy you a supersized shout out, tweet sized shout out on the show, a live read, if you will, or the ability to ask a question potentially live. And I'm pleased to say that we just got our first one as well. So here it is. Mr. Cyrus Crone, who was on the show, this is his read, right? A former show guest, Cyrus Crone, recently learned his book was selected as 2020 Indie Book of the Year by Forward Reviews. See what happens when you're on my show. He actually wrote that. But you see, this is what happens. We've seen a number of books hit bestseller status from coming on the show. No doubt tracked immediately back to being on the show. So Cyrus, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of the book. And this is a little link as well where you can go to and support Cyrus. If you haven't bought the book, go buy the book as well. I've just pasted a link below, and that is an opportunity for you to support him. So Cyrus, I hope that was worth it. I hope you enjoyed your supersized shout out for 10 JAFFE coins. You know, one of the most interesting things about this pricing mechanism is that I decided it would be 10 JAFFE coins regardless of how large the show gets. So it's 10 coins now. It's going to be 10 coins in a year's time. It's going to be 10 coins in 100 years' time. The only thing that will be different, of course, will be I'll be dead. And also the fact that the price of the JAFFE coin will change. So if you believe in getting in now and getting in early, those shout outs are going to come at a premium. So just something to think about. Well, let's get into birthdays, shall we? And on LinkedIn, we got a bunch of birthdays. I just want to say happy birthday to all of you. Hope you're having a good day. There's Amit Kumar. I have to mention you because your name got cut off a little bit. David Wee. And then on Facebook, let's see who's there. There's Mr. Sam Huxley. There is Michelle Arowitz, Chris Johnson. And oh, look, it's Mr. Tom Morris as well. Tom was a guest on my show. He is the world's happiest philosopher. He is a public philosopher. He is a double PhD from Yale. He's a professor, used to be a professor at Notre Dame. He's written over 30 books. And I can honestly say he has become not just a friend, but a really good friend. So much so, Tom, did you think I wasn't going to wish you a happy birthday? That I've decided today's seated soliloquy is going to be completely ceded to you, Tom. You are today's seated soliloquy. That is not me giving you the seated soliloquy. It's yourself giving the seated soliloquy. And this is your soliloquy called Authenticity.
Hi, I'm Tom Morris with something to think about. I've recently heard some really smart people mention the quality of authenticity and its power in our lives. I want to make my own suggestion today about this idea using an old Chinese concept. Authenticity is a form of harmony in a person. If I embody authenticity, then whenever you see me or interact with me in any way, you're not just dealing with a mask put on for some purpose. You're in contact with a real person. Authenticity is never pretending to be something you're not, but embracing the best of who you are in everything you do. It can be insightful to learn how our word person has developed. It's originally from the Latin persona, which ironically meant an actor's mask put on to play a role, represent a character in a play. Now, from childhood, we try on different masks as we play and perform, as we try to fit in and then later try to stand out. And in all those costume changes, if we're really honest with ourselves, we'll find one mask, one presentation, one look that reflects our inner self so well that it sticks and then sort of vanishes into who we really are. That's the real person who then meets others. Now, we don't fully know ourselves as we truly are, and in part that's because we're always in some sense still becoming what we're capable of being. But when we're authentic, the growth, the change, the becoming is too. Like an oak rising from its acorn. That's why Socrates insisted that we engage throughout our lives in the exercise of self-examination or self-knowledge so that we can know ourselves well enough to spot what's harmonious and what's not, what's authentic and what's not. Then as artists of authenticity, we can always be what we truly are. Hidden agendas and ulterior motives just get in the way of an authentic flow of harmony in our lives. And that harmony is an important foundational component of happiness and real success in the world. Authenticity, it's the real thing.
No, you are the real thing, Tom Morris, and Michael Kassan is the real thing as well. Michael Cassin is the founder, chairman, and CEO of MediaLink, a leading strategic advisory firm. Described as the ultimate power broker, he is a trusted advisor on speed dial with every major executive in the media, marketing, entertainment, and technology C-suite. And I mean every major executive. Trust me on this one. Cassin and his global team of more than 125 specialists provide counsel for navigating the age of digital disruption in areas including talent and organization, agency optimization, and investor strategies. Cassin is known for his uncanny ability to see and seize opportunities across complementary industries. He has also been instrumental in redefining major tentpole events like CES, Cannes, Lions, and Mobile World Congress for the greater marketing landscape. In 2019, Cassin was inducted into the American Advertising Federation's Hall of Fame, and he is not done yet. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Michael Cassin. Michael, welcome finally to the show.
Well, it's quite a pleasure, Joseph, to join you. But I do have to just correct something you said a bit ago when you spoke of a martini. I'm a vodka martini man, so you do have to make a distinction if I'm on your show between a proper martini and a vodka martini. I just need to establish that. These are details, but you know I'm a detail guy. That surprises many people, but I pay attention. And when you said that, it rubbed me the wrong way because I'm a shaken, not stirred, straight up with a twist martini man.
I'm going to tell you something, Michael Cassin. You are never shaken, and you are really stirred as well. So no, I appreciate the pushback, and look, the best way to settle this is going to be that you're going to have to come back on the show for a bit of late night JAFFE in the near future, where you will have your vodka martini, or maybe I'll have a vodka martini, you'll have a gin martini, or we could combine it and create a Vespa. And see what happens.
Well, I will share with you that for a milestone birthday back in December, an industry luminary by the name of Bill Konigsberg, he did a toast for me on a video for my birthday back in December, and he did that. He made exactly that, and that was the first time I'd heard the expression. So there you go.
I want to talk about something. It's one of my first memories with you, and it's certainly one of my most vivid ones. And I don't know whether I've told this to you before. If I did, I might have had one martini too many to drink. But
that's an oxymoron. That's impossible.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm the moron. No, but so this is what happened. It was very early in my solo entrepreneur journey. I had just published Life After the 30-Second Spot, which really was seminal. I mean, for me, it was life-changing. And you reached out to me, and you were one of the first people to believe in me and reach out to me. And you said, listen, I'm putting a little soiree together at Nobu on 57th Street. There are going to be a few people there. Would you like to maybe just do like an informal address, like 10 to 15 minutes on your book? We'll buy copies of the book. We'll put it on everyone's seat. And I thought, sure, that would be amazing. You know, I mean, Michael Cassin is, when he says a few people, there'll be a few people. I'm sure there'll be a couple of interesting leads or prospects. So this just happened to be at the same time that AT&T was going through maybe, I think, the largest consolidated media pitch in the history of the business. I believe one of the clients was Wendy Clark. I believe.
That is correct. No,
and
your memory is spot on here, Joseph.
And at this event,
keep going.
And at this event was Sir Martin Sorrell, John Wren, Maurice Levy. I mean, every single leader of every major holding company and every major agency and other key CMOs were there. And I remember hiding in the toilet. I went to the toilet where I was just trying to like go over my words and try and think of what I wanted to say, knowing, of course, full well that I'd written a book called Life After the 30-Second Spot, and there were heads of media companies there as well. I was so nervous, and then something happened, which is the event itself was the event took place, but because we were in Nobu and it was so loud, there was just a very, thin screen between us and the rest of the restaurant. You decided to not do the address because it was just really hard. And I was both disappointed and unbelievably relieved. And when I say unbelievably relieved, I mean 99% relieved, 1% disappointed. The adrenaline was still there.
Well, it's a good thing if you were relieving yourself. It's a good thing you were in the
yeah. I was a relieving relief. But Michael Donnelly says, we all believe in you now, Joe. But it just shows you, like, it comes back to beginnings. And it was that beautiful act of kindness that you believed in me when I didn't even believe in myself. And I never forgot it, and I never forgot you.
Well, let me let you in on a secret. It was your accent. No, I'm kidding. You had me at hello. Right? Exactly. You had me at hello when we met and when I read the book. And I do appreciate that. And your memory is, as I said, spot on. It was a risk at that time. I'll tell you, because there was a famous story about another famous media review and creative review where Nobu 57 actually played a role in it. And it was nothing inappropriate, but in a pitch, the pitching agency bought a martini for somebody at Nobu 57, and it became rather infamous for that in the context of a media pitch. So I decided to go against the grain and say, as long as there's a pitch going on, but if you invite everybody, then nobody could feel that they were disadvantaged or advantaged. And that was the premise I used, and that's why I used Nobu 57 that night, although I'm proud to say Nobu Matsuhisu is a 40-year friend of mine, so I would choose it anyway. But it was on purpose, the choice of location, and that was a memorable dinner. And thank you for bringing it up, Joseph. And the respect you deserved that night. I'm sorry the din of the restaurant drowned you out, but as I remember it, it brings back a wonderful memory.
You did me a favor, and you know what? Please God, soon enough, you and I will break bread, or maybe return to the scene of the crime together. I'm not sure whether it will be just the two of us, or some of our closest friends, or even frenemies, which we'll get to soon enough. But Michael, we sent our reporters, our private investigators, into the field to dig up all the dirt on Michael Kassan, and we did not come back empty-handed. Here's what we found out about you. We found out, very interesting. I don't know how many people know this, but if you weren't in your current job, you would be a stand-up comedian in the Catskills.
I thought I was now. I didn't. I'm confused.
Well, listen, you've always made me laugh. But feel free to, at any point in time, tell us a joke, or just tell us about this. Has this really been an aspiration of yours to be a stand-up comedian, or do you just, is it just something that you've always enjoyed, your ability to make people smile and make people laugh and be funny?
So can I make this the fantasy part of our conversation?
Of course.
So the true fantasy, if you go back to that picture, would have me with a microphone in my hand, but actually the microphone would be a prop, and that would be set up on a piano, and next to the microphone would be a brandy snifter, and people could drop money in, and I would sing Cole Porter, George Gershwin. I'm really a lounge lizard in disguise. That's what my fantasy is. I had one other fantasy a couple of years ago. As I grew up, my sisters, I was the youngest and the only boy, and my sisters, maybe this gives you some insight into my personality, Joseph, but my sisters would describe me as the sun, S-U-N. And maybe that influenced me, I don't know. But they taught me how to dance. So my other fantasy is to be on Dancing with the Marketing Stars, if there was such a show. So I don't know if I would characterize myself as a song and dance man with a bit of humor. The Catskills part of it comes from the fact that when my father was a kid, not when I was a kid, but when he was a teenager, he actually did stand up in the Catskills. And the greatest, excuse me, the greatest gift he gave me was humor. And it's a funny topic today. That was a play on words. Humor is a funny topic, but humor is in question today. In the world we live in today, jokes are a dying breed. You don't get to tell jokes anymore. The sensitivity and the awareness. And I'll tell you philosophically, I've had this conversation with many friends as I give speeches and the opportunity to, impart some knowledge. There is always a place for me to insert a joke purposefully. Sometimes just naturally it flows because I was given this gift from my father. The problem is there's a little voice in the back of my head that says, can't tell that joke anymore. And these are not necessarily off-color jokes or, they're just, humor isn't accepted the same way today. And it's sad on the one hand, but I go back to my core and to my rearing, and I say to you that, and I've said this countless times, my father had an extraordinary sense of humor, great dialect, tell a joke, quick wit. And I will say to you today, Joseph Jaffe, that I never once heard my father or any true comedian tell a joke that was intended to be anything other than funny. And today we dissect things in so many different ways. You look at it and say, yeah, but that could insult that person, or humor has that as part of it. So it's something that's dying, and I think it's sad. And I hope we get back to a place where you can still tell a joke, know the intention is to be funny. Humor has been so often based on irony, and irony can be funny. And it doesn't have to be hurtful. Yeah. So it's a whole other conversation about the world we live in. And so whilst I pepper most of my conversations with a joke or a story, I fancy myself, not like you, but I fancy myself a reasonably good storyteller. I try to continue to use it, but it's a challenge in this day and age. So that's why I guess I'm leaning on my song and dance fantasies as opposed to my stand-up Catskills comic fantasy these days.
It's funny because literally 24 hours ago, I was interviewing Dr. Robin DiAngelo, who wrote White Fragility. And this is the very topic that we discussed, which is humor and comedy and specifically exactly what you said. I mean, I guess the point is sometimes a joke is just a joke, right? Sometimes funny is just funny, and there isn't an ulterior motive, and there isn't anything nefarious. And I mean, your point is absolutely taken. Adam John says, so profound. The comedian does not tell a joke with any other intent than to be funny. Intent has grown to be undervalued a bit lately.
True that, and that's exactly my point. Even the biting humor, even the Don Rickles or in his heyday, or a Joan Rivers in her heyday, where they have that sort of insult humor. The insults weren't meant to actually insult you. They were meant to be funny. They were meant to draw on that part of your personality or your ethnicity or your special something that was funny. Again, with the intent being at the core.
Right. I mean,
So,
look, and self-deprecation has always been part of my, part of my portfolio, part of my personality. And but also on the flip side is just
and
this.
modify that though. I don't. You said, I'm going to modify what you said. I think it's also self-awareness.
Yeah.
I think it's also self-awareness. I think that's really important. I've always subscribed to the philosophy, using humor in a different way, Joseph. I've always subscribed to the philosophy that one has an advantage when one knows one's own joke.
Yeah, I love that.
If you know the joke that people will tell about you, if you own it, then you own it.
And I'll add one more thing to that, which is authenticity, which is, as I've often said to people, even in my own evolution on the show, I don't in a briefing document tell my guests what they can say, what they can't say, if they can swear, I don't care. I mean, this is the streaming era, as I call it. As long as they are being true to themselves, and I've been asked the question before, which is it okay to swear? When is it okay to swear? And my answer is always the same. If you have to think about it, you probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
If you have to ask the question, you probably shouldn't. But other than that, just be yourself.
So one of my favorite characters in history was Oscar Wilde. And I got a bug years ago to read a book that was written called Wilde in America. And it talked about Oscar Wilde, excuse me, when he made the trip to United States in the period when he was kind of kicked out of Europe. He was being judged for his sexual proclivities and whatnot, and he was kind of run out of Europe. And one of my favorite quotes is his, which is, I'll get it close to right: "Be yourself, because everyone else is taken." It's an old one, but it's a good one. The other one that always sticks out for me from Oscar Wilde, as long as I'm sounding erudite, is the one where he says, the definition of a cynic. Are you familiar with that, Joseph? Someone who knows the price of everything, excuse me, and the value of nothing.
Yeah.
So those are two that really kind of bookend Oscar Wilde for me. And the other little fact about Oscar Wilde, which I read that made me pay attention, we live in a world where celebrity is defined in so many different ways today. If you think of, and I know these people since they were children, so they grew up with my kids, but if you look at the Kardashians as an enterprise, as a now multi-billion, there's 3 different businesses that I can think of now that have achieved billion-dollar valuations for the Kardashians. And I like to say that I've known the Kardashians since they were keeping up with the Cassins, as opposed to the reverse. But truly, Oscar Wilde was the first person in history who became a celebrity because he was a celebrity. That's kind of like what the Kardashians did. They became celebrities because they were celebrities. I think we lost sight of why they became celebrities. So therefore, if you look back in history, Oscar Wilde has played a role, apropos of nothing other than you talking about be yourself, number one. Number two, Joseph, you said something, and I said back to you about knowing one's own joke. You were kind enough to mention the blessing that I received in 2019, being inducted into the Advertising Hall of Fame. And I was quite moved by it, and I was quite honored and felt blessed. And I stood up in front of the audience. A video had been done, and I only knew the theme of the video, but I'd not seen it till the night of the event. So I was kind of emotional and taken back by it. And the theme of the video was, "This is Michael's bar mitzvah." And I walked out and I looked out at the audience. Excuse me. I looked out at the audience and I said, I was so moved by watching the video, and I thought to myself, this is not like my bar mitzvah, because at my bar mitzvah, everybody gave me a check. And I looked out at the audience and I paused and I said, well, maybe this is like my bar mitzvah. And Joseph, that cuts to the core because, you know, I know the quote joke, and it's not a joke, thankfully, about MediaLink, that we work for everybody for something. And so I looked out at a room of 1,000 marketers and I thought, well, okay, as I said, maybe this is like my bar mitzvah. So again, that goes to, I share that not to sound funny, but to share, that was me acknowledging kind of what I already know. And I think that's so important as you deal with people. That's what, to me, authenticity gets to, is just understanding, you know, from your perspective, but also understanding from the other person's perspective.
Well, listen, there is a lot going on. First of all, Michael Donnelly is kind of coming to terms with you being a lounge lizard. That is something we'd never expect of of one of our most illustrious industry leaders. Fun facts help make the show uniquely informative, entertaining, and proactive. Thank you.
Yeah, Donnelly better be careful because, you know, I'm fortunate to have shared my life with my wife, Ronnie, for the last, we will celebrate our 47th anniversary this year. I took her away for an illicit weekend in Las Vegas 48 years ago. And we were driving and I put it was probably an 8-track cassette into the car radio, and Sinatra came on and I sang, and she turned to me and said, you know, you have a pretty good voice. And I said, would you marry me? Because if you think I have a good voice, then we have a future. So Donnelly, be careful.
Wow. Wait, is that a true story?
Partially. I didn't actually ask her to marry me then. I thought it, but she did tell me that. I asked her to marry me shortly after. So I've embellished a bit of the story, but you know, as I tell people all the time, don't ruin a good story with the facts.
I mean, listen, my wife no doubt did not marry me for my face for radio. So it must have been my singing voice or maybe a sense of humor or a lack thereof. I will tell you, Michael Cassin, that I actually, I think you may know this, you may not, but I'm actually a practicing cantor. And so I could actually give you your call up to read from your Torah portion
If this was an Aliyah, not an interview, I would have prepared entirely differently.
You know, you would have got a big yamod from me. I'm just letting you know. Maybe. So any grandkids?
I can sing a mean Sim Shalom. Trust me.
You did not expect that to go in that direction, nor did I. And look who's here. Steve is here, and he said Michael Kassan is awesome. AAF, Advertising Hall of Fame. That is where Steve is at the moment. Actually, Steve is going to be on Clubhouse with me today, talking about his pivot as well.
Here's the thing about Steve. He actually likes my wife Ronnie better than he likes me, and I don't hold that against him because I quite like her as well. So when Steve was in his role as Chief Marketing Officer of Federal Express, that FedEx back in the day, he did something so special. Ronnie loves FedEx, loves the FedEx truck, loves FedEx. Steve knew that. He sent Ronnie a care package years and years ago of FedEx plush dolls and hats. And I could buy her, a diamond at Cartier. It wouldn't have moved the needle as much as Steve's care package of FedEx for my wife. So he knows he has a special place in the Cassin family.
So Michael Cassin may be the first guest that has been on the show, and there have been 235 of them, where we may not even get into the subject matter, where we're just discussing fun facts and reminiscing. But I think what you see here is the power of relationship, the power of intimacy, the power of connection, the power of authenticity. And, earlier, Michael, you spoke about the democratization of that event, right? Treating everyone the same, treating everyone equally. But also there is a term in our industry, in the marketing and the advertising industry. It's not probably endemic to the industry, but it is an important one, and that is the concept of frenemies. So another fun fact that we found out about you is that actually, trying to find anything to embarrass you is well, maybe the Aliyah might have, but your life is literally an open book. And if you've read Frenemies, you would know. This concept of frenemy, I love the concept. The book you're citing is the book by Ken Auletta, and I would love for you to talk about this idea, right? Of what a frenemy is, why it's important, how it has impacted and inserted itself in the business, and what people should kind of take away from it. Where is the and there's a lot of insight, hope, positivity, optimism, but more importantly, just the constructive knowledge, the insights that people would be able to use to create a more authentic, productive version of themselves.
Well, the word frenemies, I'm not sure if he invented it, but the first time I heard it used in the context of our industry was by Sir Martin Sorrell. And he was referring to primarily at that time the platforms, Facebook and Google. And his point was, as he was utilizing that term, on the one hand, for WPP back in those days under former management, Google was their largest trading partner. And on the other hand, Martin believed that Google at its core was in the business or in the mindset of disintermediation of the agencies. So that's where the concept came from. On the one hand, at least as it related to the marketing industry, how can we be your biggest client on the one hand and you're trying to take our clients on the other hand? Well, Google and Facebook and others would tell you that they were never interested in disintermediation and Xing out the agency, if you will. They were interested, however, because the clients were interested, and I can get into that a little more, but the clients, the marketers themselves, were breaking out of their ring fence that traditionally, and look, I ran at the time, and back in last century, I am that old, what was then the largest media agency in the world. So I too was very territorial and protective of that agency-client relationship, but I'd watched it change over the years. And as it changed, clients, marketers wanted to have more direct connection with the people they were doing business with, the sellers, if you will, the publishers, the platforms. And the agency was losing some of that gatekeeper role, if you will. And that's where frenemies came from in the context of our industry. You can't be talking to our clients directly as if the marketers were chattel of some sort of the agencies. And of course, that's not the case. And so that's where Ken Auletta, who over the period of his research on this book and for many years has become a close friend, although I will tell you as a postscript to those who've read the book, I spent a lot of time with Ken and his research. And at some point he did follow me around a bit in a positive way because we did become friends. But I will tell you here on this show, and I've said this loud and clear for a couple of years since the book was published, Joseph, I had no idea, zero with a line drawn through it, that I was going to end up being arguably the major protagonist in the book. I did not know that till I read The Galleys. And I called Ken and said, what the? And you can finish that sentence. I said, exactly when did you decide that I would be the major protagonist in the book? He said, about halfway through my research. I said, might you have shared that with me? And he said, no. And, I kind of resolved myself to the fact of how it played out. And I will tell you, there were a few daunting moments. One particularly, was that year I was flying to Cannes for the Lions Festival, and the moment was I'm walking on the plane and there are 6 or 7 people holding up a book called Frenemies and reading it, and I'm walking down the aisle and it had just come out and I thought, this is going to be interesting. because I again had read it, and here were 6 or 7 people on the flight flying to Cannes with the Carlton Hotel in the background. Thank you for that. With a big Media Link sign on the back there, maybe.
For sure.
It was kind of daunting, I have to say, to feel like you were in the middle of the firestorm. So,
well, let's, Adam adds, this is such a key point you make about frenemies, that gatekeepers who don't add value are squeezed out of the system with this evolution. But you're
I want to touch that though, Joseph, because I'm not sure I agree that that they're squeezed out of the system. They have to reinvent. I agree with Adam in his point. If you're a gatekeeper who doesn't add value and you're just charging a toll on the way in, that doesn't necessarily have a value unless you're using that money to improve the roads or make transportation better, if I take that analogy. But I think what happened as a result of this is the agency ecosystem was forced to reinvent and reimagine and innovate, innovate what they were doing. And I think they've done it. In the main, I think the agencies have realized their role is different. They have to have more of a strategic, less transactional.
It's simple, right? Adapt or die, survival of the fittest. My favorite quote, and I'm about to give you another one, but, of course, Charles Darwin, who said it is not the strongest of species that survives, nor the most intelligent, but rather the one that is the most adaptable to change. But this is what I found for you, Michael. This is a little esoteric, and I loved it because sometimes I find a quote and I don't exactly know what it means. I think I know what it means, but I just thought it was meaty enough for you. And this is your quote. When your friends like you, it is your craze. And when your frenemies like you, it is your grace. I mean, I thought it was quite profound, to be honest. And it was just, and this came from Sir Professor Dr. P.S. Jagadish Kumar, who's the first world citizen to receive multiple international doctorates in engineering, science, and philosophy from the top universities in the world, even more than Tom Morris. How do you interpret that? Or
well, one of the things we've learned when we do media, analysis and media reviews, which we do a fair amount of those at Media Link, some of the most important ones in the world. You spoke to AT&T, and we've continue to work for them, but we've worked across so many different industries and led some of the most important media and creative reviews in the world. There's an interesting time when you work with some of the entertainment media companies when they do their own reviews. For example, the Walt Disney Company. We worked with the Walt Disney Company for many years, and back in 2019, we led what then became the largest media review in history because it was for a global application of all the spend across the Walt Disney Company. And it's always an interesting situation because on the one hand, the agencies are vying for the business from the Walt Disney Company. On the other hand, the agencies do billions and billions and billions of dollars worth of business with the Walt Disney Company. And what I've always counseled media companies on, and we've worked for Comcast and Disney and CBS and down the line, Warner Media, et cetera, and continue to, in a contest where the losers are still your important partners, you have to make sure that they lose well.
Mm.
And I think that goes to, maybe I missed the message, but I think that goes to your point about it's your grace when your frenemies like you, because you've just told somebody they've lost, and yet you need to continue to do a lot of business with them. If it's a packaged goods company, just as an example, if they're having an agency contest, do you think the losing agency is going to buy less toothpaste or less, soap powder? Not likely.
I love it. I think you nailed it. I absolutely think you nailed it. And it comes down to, as you say, what a wonderful concept, lose well. But I think inherent in all of that, Michael, is the importance of respect. And in any contest, where there is a winner and loser, there is a grace associated with, I guess it used to be a handshake, but now it's probably a fist bump. So I love that conversation. I want to segue into just a couple of things that we were going to talk about. Obviously, we're going to do an after show in Clubhouse, and we can get to some of the things we were going to talk about. Brand formance. We were going to talk about don't unlearn the lessons that 2020 taught us. But I wanted to begin with the future of work. And not just the future of work, right? The future of face-to-face, the future of we are 4 feet apart right now virtually, but the ability to bear hug, the ability to handshake, the ability to break bread, proximity, there's so much. But you've encapsulated it very beautifully with this idea of how tall is Ben King. Now, I've met Ben King in the green room, and I have no friggin' idea how tall he is. But I thought it would be great for you to talk about these 2 critical points, right? Which is how in this moment, in this time, and I would love to hear your thoughts on when are we getting back to the new normal? What does the new normal look like? But your first point was, how do we interact with people that we've never met before? You've never met Ben, you don't know how tall he is. And then the second idea, of course, is dealing with this new hybrid virtual existence as an extrovert, when you are when your life force is about that the energy, the face-to-face, the proximity, etc. So would love to hear your thoughts on that, Michael.
Well, the genesis of How Tall Has Ben King, about 3+ months ago, Benjamin King joined me as chief of staff. And Joseph, you've known all the chief of staffs that I've had back to Grant Gitlin 13 years ago. And I've been blessed to have 6 wonderful folks in that role that have been kind of my right-hand person. And I have to say that what happened with Ben, we were on a Zoom, and of course he was interviewed, referenced, and onboarded all virtually to a pivotal role in my life, literally my right-hand person, and I'd never met him in person. And we were kidding on a Zoom, and he said something about, how tall, and I said, to your point, I said, I have no idea. I've never seen you in any position other than sitting down. And this has become a buzzword for me because I've looked at the future of work, but I've looked at it through the lens of friends of mine and associates who've onboarded into new roles from CEO on down and taken over companies, and they've never met their team. And it's a daunting challenge. And so I promised Ben King, and you're helping me do that I was going to make him famous, because I am going to write a piece about How Tall Is Ben King as part of what we are all dealing with in a virtual world. So that was the thread of that, because, by the way, I'm going to meet Ben King in person for the first time next week. And I'm kind of nervous. I don't know if I should put lifts in my shoes or, do my Toulouse-Lautrec. I'm not sure exactly what to expect when I see him.
You have to record it, by the way, and send that video into the show so that we can show the great meeting between Michael and Ben.
Yeah, well, but there you go. But it really speaks to the larger issue of how do you onboard, how do you work in this context. Now, hopefully, we're going to come out of this, and we will have the opportunity to be in person. But you asked a more important question, which is the future of this, and I think it's going to be led by a few things. In the context of the work we do, again, it's only a portion of our jobs, but in the review process, it's going to be the clients who are going to determine whether they're going to demand in person. We've done reviews that have been all over the world, and people have traveled and spent tens of millions of dollars to travel and do things that now you haven't had to do. And so I think if the clients demand it, the pitching agencies are going to have to adhere to it. But I don't know that the clients are going to demand it. I think everybody is looking at efficiency and saying, yes, whilst there'll still be a desire to be in person and have that bear hug or that fist bump, I think handshakes might be something of the covered wagon at some point. But I think it's going to be driven by peer pressure. I've asked some of the holding company CEOs, if you're in a situation where your competitor shows up, do you feel the need to show up? Number one. Number two, do you feel that it's incumbent to do that? And I think we're going to see how it plays out. My view is, and I'll give you a real life story. When we were finishing a very large assignment back in 2019, the final meeting with the senior most executives of this company was scheduled when it was going to be advertising week in New York. And this particular company had offices both in Los Angeles and New York. I had to be in New York, but I had to be in the meeting. So I went to this company and I said, look, you have an office in Manhattan. I can go to your office and I can do it on video, on your telepresence. And it won't be, we didn't have Zoom then, or if we did, we didn't know it. And it was flawless. It wasn't some, jerry-rigged system. I was in their system, in their office in New York versus LA. I had one of my associates with me in New York, and the other senior associate from MediaLink that was managing the opportunity was in Los Angeles. And the senior guy walks into the meeting and he looks up at the screen and looks at me and says, oh, I thought this was a meeting. And I thought to myself, what a wise ass. Of course it's a meeting. You can see me, I can see you. And this was in the fall of 19, certainly pre-pandemic. I question whether that comment would ever be made again today, because I think we're going to be in a world where some will be in person, some will be on video. Hybrid is the way we live. So I'm throwing that question to you, Joseph, or to the audience, if you will. Is that something anyone would even say today? No, and I don't mean today, of course not, but 6 months from now, maybe. And I'm being an optimist that in 6 months, gee, I could be in person if I wanted to be. And yet I was on video. Is that person going to think that I'm lesser? And it goes to two things. I'm not proud to say I've traveled halfway around the world for lunch many times in my life, or for a dinner. I've done that. I don't know if I did it because it was necessary, or I did it because it was a badge of honor. Like, look at me, I'm a macho, I can do this. And look at you, you're so important that I flew to Hong Kong for lunch. Today, if I did that, someone smart might look at me and go, are you out of your mind? Like, why would you do that? You could do this. You don't need to fly halfway around the world for lunch or dinner or a meeting. So, I'm answering a question with a question, Joseph, but I think so much of it is going to be determined by peer pressure, by what the other folks are doing. I mean, we could probably write a book on just that idea of peer pressure. But my takeaway, and I love the honesty and the transparency. I've gone through my own growth and my own introspection now, thinking I don't even know if I ever want to get on a plane again. What was I thinking, looking forward to sitting even in business class with that tiny little piece of overcooked fish, with everything about it, God bless American Airlines, but the champagne wasn't exactly, I've vinoed their bottles. I know exactly how much they cost. I drink better wine here in my home, but everything about it, there's a reprioritization and a recalibration. And the one thing that struck me with what you said, Michael, which is a really interesting concept, is in a pitch, maybe two sides are going to have to make that decision. The client being able to say, in person is optional or mandatory. And if and for that, chemistry, culture, importance of face-to-face is going to play a role. And then there's going to be jockeying and psychology and jousting in terms of who shows up and who doesn't. And I think the smart players, certainly the sellers, the agencies, the company showing up to pitch, if they aren't there in person, will do things that are unbelievably innovative and creative. And I think recognize that what's happening right now, and I've said this before, Michael, you and I probably, I don't know that we've ever, we've actually had many meetings together, but this is one-on-one, just the two of us for 1 hour. You can't put a price.
put a price tag on how special this is and how intimate this is and how personal this is. Yes, they're comments. We're sharing ourselves and this conversation with other people, but this is as real gets.
Well, for sure. But I have to remind you, Joseph, I practiced law for 10 years before I came into the media business. So I used to be able to tell you how much it was worth because I know what I would charge by the hour.
Am I getting an invoice? Are you getting an invoice?
No.
Are you getting? Maybe you're
this
getting an invoice.
This is pleasure. This is pleasure. But I couldn't resist this because as our friends at McCann Erickson created one of the most memorable campaigns of the generation, the MasterCard Priceless campaign, which I value at the highest level because it became part of our jargon. This is priceless. So thank you.
I love that. No, thank you as well. We'll touch on one more point in the time we have, which is the other half of the future of work is the idea of being an extrovert. You are a social butterfly. You are the life of the party. You are magnetic. I'm not just saying this. I'm just stating facts here. And it must have been difficult for you during this time to have been, isolated, so to speak, and dealing with that. And now I will say one more thing, which is I've also learned through this period about ambiverts, about introverted extroverts, about extroverted introverts. I think I'm an extroverted introvert, but I think you must be an extroverted extrovert. How have you coped, and how do you think you will cope as we get back to the new normal?
Well, I am an extrovert. A good friend of mine in the industry, Daryl Evans, who actually for many years was at Singular and AT&T, and then joined MediaLink for some period. He used to joke around and tell me I was supposedly, but in his mind only, I was the model for the Dos Equis Most Interesting Man campaign. And of course I laughed, but he said, "No, Michael, you're the life of the party at parties you don't attend." So, we could do a whole section on the quotes from that campaign of the world's most interesting man. But one of my favorites was when he said, "I had an awkward moment once just to see what it felt like."
I got to give you two. In fairness, I got to give you two. My two favorites is that his mother has a tattoo that says "son," and the other one is he once parallel parked a train.
His business card merely said, "I'll call you."
I love that. I mean, just by the way, the most fascinating, story behind the story of how
it was Jonathan Goldsmith, who's a nice Jewish guy from Brooklyn, who was the world's most interesting man in the campaign, by the way.
And in addition to that, how they let him go, and then he was snapped up for a tequila brand. I mean, you can't make this up. You can't make it up. But I would love to just get a thought, final thought from you about what does life look like in your, if you look into your crystal ball for the introverts, for the extroverts, for this new networking, with Cannes going completely hybrid. Not hybrid, with Cannes going virtual in 21. What does that look like?
Well, the Lions themselves are going to be virtual. MediaLink, which, as you kindly stated at the beginning, has found a way over the years to reimagine at least our position in these tentpole events from CES to Cannes and Mobile World Congress and others. We will be doing something live in New York. I've been fortunate over the years to be associated with, and now I'm proudly a member of the Board of Trustees of the Whitney Museum, one of the great art institutions in the world. We will be on some level reimagining the MediaLink Beach from Cannes at the Whitney Museum in the third week of June in New York. So we will be doing hybrid. We will be doing in person in conjunction with our sister company. Obviously, the Lions are owned by Essential, the same company that I sold MediaLink to 4+ years ago. But again, my view is the pent-up demand is strong. People do want to interact in that context. It isn't just about drinking rosé. In fact, on behalf of the rosé growers in the world, I'd like to say you get a bad rap because people tend to drink it in the south of France, but it's just a prop. We are there for networking and opportunity and sharing ideas around creativity and the like. So a glass of rosé doesn't hurt that.
I thought you were going to say to the rosé growers,
cheers.
Thanks for being patient. We'll be back. Michael Kassan, let me tell you, if you're looking for a in-person speaker for your virtual event, I come with only one, there's only one thing that needs to be in my rider, and that is I need a stall, a private toilet or bathroom stall to help me with my nerves. And my little earpiece just dropped out. This just shows
I think you probably need a proper vodka martini, taking us all the way back to the beginning. That'll calm your nerves down for sure.
I'm telling you, this has been Michael Kassan. He is the chairman and CEO of MediaLink. He is a mensch. He is a bar mitzvah boy. He is going to be back at Cannes in some way, shape, or form. He is an extrovert. He is a frenemy, but he really is not a frenemy. He is a friend. You can connect with him on Facebook. You can connect with him on Twitter. You can connect with him in Clubhouse, which is where we're going right now. Or don't worry about connecting with him. He'll connect with you. His business card just reads, I'll get back to you. Michael Kassan, thank you for coming in. Let's head on over to the Zoom after show. And one of the other interesting, remember the other line about Chuck Norris, right? You'll remember Chuck Norris. They would always say, the reason why lightning doesn't strike the same place twice is because Chuck Norris is looking for it.
You are Chuck Norris approved.
There you
Can
go.
I answer that, Joseph? Do I have one moment to answer that? Can I tell one quick short story?
Yes, go for it.
So 20 plus years ago, I was invited by a friend 25 years ago to a LA Kings hockey game. And in the foursome was myself, this friend of mine, Chuck Norris, and one other person. And in the midst of conversation with Chuck Norris, the hockey puck glided over the glass, and we were sitting on the glass, right on the, the floor seats, if you will. And I was startled because it landed in my lap. And what did I do? I took it and I threw it back on the ice. I was booed by 17,000 people at the Fabulous Forum in Southern California because I wasn't a hockey fan. I thought it was kind of like a basketball game. If the ball ends in your lap, you throw it back. I threw the puck back. The next day, my kids were at school and all their friends came up to him and said, your father was on the big screen. He threw the puck back. What an idiot. And it was Chuck Norris who was sitting next to me when I did it. So apropos of nothing other than Chuck Norris.
The reason why Michael Kassan doesn't throw the ball back or throws the ball back is because Chuck Norris is sitting next to him. Doesn't roll up the tongue as well. But Michael, this has been fun. Let's do it again, in person, hybrid, virtual. As long as I can see your smiling face, let us head on over to the Zoom after show, or not the Zoom after show, the Clubhouse after show.
Perfect. Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing with your host, multiple author and global keynote speaker, Joseph JAFFE. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show. And if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.